Hey there. So yesterday I started getting back into a technique that Larry Crane got from Lester Levenson many years ago. Larry Crane died, 2016 or so, and he was in his 80s when he passed away. But he left us with a system that he termed the butt system. And it was something that came out of his conversation with Lester Levenson. And you can look up Lester Levenson and Larry Crane on the internet and get the information about each one of those people. But essentially, Lester Levenson had found had healed himself through this process of releasing. It was a releasing technique that he had developed that enabled him to actually heal himself of basically a chronic condition that was going to end his life in his mid-40s. And in that process, he was also able to find complete happiness and what he termed imperturbability. So essentially, he got to a point in his life where there was nothing that anybody could do or say to him that would bother him. He was imperturbable. Nothing in the environment, nothing in that anyone did bothered him at all. And he was able, once he got to that point where he just basically felt complete love for everyone around him. So he's one of the few people who really exhibited this love that I've referred to in a previous video, where I said where people just that nobody loves me. This was another video that I'd done, and basically the whole point of that was that there are very few people on this planet who really know how to love. And knowing how to love it's not even the right way to say it. It's really allowing yourself to be who you really are, so that your love is not blocked or impeded by the ego, essentially. So why am I bringing this all up? Well, because I was reintroducing myself to this releasing technique, which is very simple in actuality. But Larry Crane wrote a book called The Abundance Book, and he has the Abundance course. I think there's a website called releasetechnique.com or something like that, where you can go and purchase the course. Several $100s, and it includes coaching and that kind of thing. But the reality is that people can do this entire technique on their own because it's so simple. The problem with a technique that's so simple is that people don't believe that it is that simple. They aren't convinced that it's so simple, that because of its simplicity that they can actually achieve imperturbability. They can actually let go of all of their fear, all of their negative emotion, and be completely happy. And so the funny thing of it is that people go after coaches and spend lots of money, thousands of dollars in some cases, flying to see these gurus and all this, and asking these intellectual questions, thinking that somehow they're going to find some other answer. But the answer isn't in intellectualizing it. The answer isn't in trying to understand it. The answer is in actually doing the process. And by doing the process, experiencing the freedom that comes from releasing these emotions. So today I was out on a walk. Finally, the weather let up enough that I could go on a walk, and instead of it pouring down rain like it's been doing the last few days. And so I did a little, I do a walk for about 3.5, 4 miles near my house. And as I was on this walk, I was just letting my mind wander on emotions, things that I want to release. And what struck me is it was kind of funny what came up, because as I was on this walk, because it's been so wet around here lately, there's these leaves that have fallen off the trees, and they basically have become mush on the ground. So there's this light layer of mush, some of which is slippery, but there's also, you can, every once in a while, you run into, like, on the sidewalk, there's dog poop that basically has gotten wet and smooshed along with the leaves. So one of the things that came to my mind as I'm walking along these leaves is the thought, the aversion that I have to dog shit, and and how having dog shit on my shoe is so repulsive. It brought up this feeling of repulsion just thinking about accidentally stepping on this dog shit while I'm trying to walk on these slippery leaves, and that if I don't keep my eyes down on the path in front of me, that I'm probably going to end up stepping in some freaking dog shit that's going to stick to my shoe like glue, as you know, sticky dog shit does, and is just going to stink, and it's going to be with me, and I'm going to have to scrape it off with a stick to get it off the bottom of my shoe, and that whole gross thought about that. And so as I was thinking about how much I dislike the smell of dog shit, the stickiness of it, it being on my shoe, I started going into that feeling of, what is this feeling? And can I release it? And so I remember the thought of having the aversion to the smell, just that pungent stench of dog shit on my shoe. And then having stepped in it, then the kind of this embarrassment or humiliation of having stepped in dog shit, which is kind of a weird thing to think about, because, you know, most people have stepped in dog shit at some point or another, and it's an accident. It's not anything that is shameful, but somehow, because of the embarrassment of having dog shit on my shoe, because it stinks so bad, and that somebody coming next to me, you know, walking near me, or maybe if I were stepping in it and then stepping into somebody's car, which has happened in the past, where I remember, you know, getting into a car and, oh, somebody stepped in dog shit. It smells like crap in this car. And the shame that comes from that, the embarrassment, the humiliation, the shame of having stepped in dog shit and now smelling like shit, and getting into somebody's car, and just this reflection back to childhood when something like that happened, and this feeling of aversion, of embarrassment, of shame of having stepped in dog shit. And so all this came to me as I was thinking of this emotion, or just thinking about dog poop and this feeling that comes with it. And so I went through this process, which is very simple, and I'll just give it to you right now. Basically, I just asked myself, can I let go of this aversion to stepping in dog shit? And at the time I was thinking, no, I can't. And so that's what I answered, no. And then the next question is, will I let go of this aversion to stepping in dog shit? And again, the answer for me was no. I will not let go of this aversion. It stinks. Everyone around me hates it. I hate it. It's an aversion. I can't let it go. I will not let it go. And the last question to ask myself was, when will I let it go? And at that point I was kind of stuck, because I already said that I can't let it go, that I will not let it go, and now I'm at a point where, when will I let it go? And I didn't have an answer. So I posed myself a different question, because those three questions are typically the questions that you use with Larry Crane's butt system. Or also the Sedona method, which is another popular method, also that came out of the Lester Levenson school of thought uses these same questions. Can you let it go? Will you let it go? When? Okay, so those are questions, but when I got to when, I couldn't answer. So to come up with something that would help me, I asked the question, why can't I let it go? And at that point I pondered and I thought, well, I can't let it go because the thought of stepping in dog shit is so repulsive that, and I remember being embarrassed by it. I remember being feeling shamed about it. And then, so I went back and started, well, can I let go of this feeling of shame? Can I let go of this shame? I thought, well, yes, I can let go of this shame. Will I let go of this shame? Yes. When? Now. So you can go through this process, and just asking the questions is the important part. The answer that you give is not really critical to the result that you get. But if you go through the process of actually asking those questions, and you may not even answer them, you can go through it without answering them. I find it's best to answer them and be as honest as possible. If you really, in fact, the more honest you can be with yourself, the better the technique works, because essentially it is about being open and honest with how you really feel. If you can't let it go, be honest about it. I freaking can't let this go. But then if you go through and then you ask at the point where you're supposed to ask, when will you let it go? And if you really can't let it go, ask yourself, well, why can't I let this go? And then see where that takes you. It may be that there's a resistance, or that there's shame, or there's some other emotion that's attached to this thing that you started with. And then you can go through that same process with that other feeling, that, or maybe that resistance to letting go of the previous feeling, and then see what happens there. Because what I find is that a lot of times there's resistance, and sometimes I can't let go of the resistance. And then I even have to go to looking at the reason why I have resistance. And I find that there's a resistance to letting go of the resistance. And so then I work through the process with that. So I could have resistance upon resistance, and then the thing that I'm resisting. So go through this process. Can I let it go? Will I let it go? When will I let it go? And be very honest with the answers. There's no shame in not feeling like letting it go, in not being able to let it go. No shame whatsoever. The honesty is what really matters. And doing this process, you'll find that it may not seem real significant. It may not be a big shift, but you may just find in your chest the feeling that you have, which is typically what I notice is the feeling can be anywhere from the throat area all the way down to the bottom of the stomach. Whatever that feeling is, it usually is in the core somewhere, but it's not in the head. The head is your thinking center, but where you feel the emotion is typically somewhere down in this area. And that is what's going to make the difference, is in working through these feelings, is getting in touch with where you feel it in your body. Identify it. In fact, Larry Crane recommends that you basically turn your head down and look at your chest or stomach, because what it does, or what he claims it does, is activates your feeling center and gets you out of the thinking center. So because if you're stuck in your head, if you're trying to go after relieving your thoughts, it's a no-win situation. It's when you go into the feelings of it and go into the body and actually allow the release of the feelings, which are the cause of your negative thoughts in many cases. So letting the feelings release, the emotions release, that is key. And anyway, go through this exercise, just try it, and you may notice that you'll feel a little lighter the first time you do it. And then as you do this again and again with either that same feeling or other feelings, you'll notice a little more lightness and a little more lightness. And those things that bothered you a lot in the past, they'll bother you less and less, and may even get to the point, or they should get to the point if you're continually releasing, to where those things don't bother you at all. And so that's what I was doing on my walk. I started actually with dog shit, funny enough. But then after that, I started going into other things, like the feelings of certain types of torture. And this is getting kind of, seems kind of sickening. But for me, it was looking at different types of things that, if they happened to my body, would be very horrific to me. And then just working through that. So you can do this. And you don't have to work with anything hard, big at the beginning. Look at me. I started with dog shit, and at least for today. But it can be something else, just like maybe some little annoyance. Maybe there's somebody that cut you off in traffic and that annoyed you, and just work through the process with a feeling that that you got triggered on in that scenario. Or it could be, for example, there was another thing that I was thinking about that really annoyed me, is I have some next door neighbors who have dogs, and every time there's sirens that you can't hardly even hear the sirens, they're so far in the distance, all of a sudden these dogs start howling and barking and howling and barking, and just drives me nuts. Well, that's a trigger for me. I have hated this annoyance of these noisy dogs howling at sirens. To me, it seems like there's no freaking reason for it. I have other friends with dogs, and there's sirens around them, and they never make any noise about it or start howling or anything. But these dogs next door, they just go crazy. Also, there was another noise that was really bothering me the other day, and it just seems like in this particular neighborhood that I'm in, I've been here just a couple of years now, but it seems like there's a lot more noise than in my previous neighborhood, and motor noise, like somebody will come and start using one of those leaf blowers and just blowing and making all kinds of noise with a leaf blower, and that bugs me. And then there was, I don't know what it was, but somebody had what sounded like a lawnmower engine revved at full max throttle, and it was running for like 8 hours that way, it seemed like. And that was really bothering me. So just things like that. They're just not even major annoyances, but things that annoy you, that bother you, irritations. It could be family members, children, your parents, whatever. Things that people say or stuff that you hear in the news. Those little annoyances are things that are triggers for you, and you can release them with this technique. So you just ask yourself, can I let go of this irritation? Will I let go of this irritation? And when? And then just focus on the feeling in the chest area, okay? And see what happens, see how the shift happens. And then you can ask yourself, can I let it go a little more? Will I let it go a little more? and when, and a little more, and a little more. And take a little breath, a deep breath, and let it just flow out of you. And this is how feelings should flow through us. They're not meant to stay in our bodies. Even joy, even happiness. You'll notice that when you get real happy, you feel bursts of joy. They come and then they just go through, and then they're gone, and then some other emotion comes and replaces it. So, but particularly with negative feelings, it seems like negative feelings are things we tend to hang on to, and getting to where we can just let them flow through us and let them go is the key to really enjoying life. Just letting those emotions flow through without sticking. All right, so that's all I got for you today. Have an excellent rest of your day. Ciao.